of the crop!
I'd be committing a grave sin if I didn't briefly talk about Lucha Libre here. I'll return to overall Lucha history again in a much more significant capacity for future editions, because it has many facets, and it deserves consideration as well as celebration of its own, apart from American wrestling and other styles. I often think of Lucha Libre's many masked wrestlers as the epitome of kayfabe. They're not simply playing a part, but literally concealing their own identity physically in an effort to wholly fuse themselves to a performance identity. And I interject Lucha Libre at this point because someone like El Santo took kayfabe beyond the wrestling ring and into the annals of Mexican history, becoming a film star and a full-on Mexican folk hero in the process. Not all luchas are masked, yet the masked wrestler holds a significant storied place in the historical evolution of Mexico's wrestling landscape. Lucha Libre was already considered poor man's theater, a combination of sport, theater, and circus. And then the first masked luchas appeared in Mexico, starting in 1934 with the likes of El Enmascarado, Masked One, the Masked Basque, and Ciclón McKee. In the early 1940s, El Santo, real name Rodolfo Guzman Huerta, appeared on the Lucha Libre scene, leaving a lasting mark upon wrestling and Mexico as a whole. His popularity in film goes beyond that of The Rock or Batista or John Cena or anybody. Not in numbers or revenue, but in the status El Santo achieved within Mexican society. El Santo appeared in lucha films, at least 52 between 1958 and 1982, and comic books, portraying a freedom-loving fighter for justice who stood up for the common people. This image elevated El Santo to the status of folk hero. His reputation among everyday people quickly became legend, as many stories told of El Santo depicted the generosity and consideration he expressed for his people. His legacy in and out of the ring transcended wrestling and Mexican culture. In 2016, in honor of what would be El Santo's 99th birthday, Google Doodle ran an El Santo doodle for the day of September 23rd. El Santo may in fact be the purest, most notable instance of kayfabe of all. Huerta did become his character, fully stepping into kayfabe by crossing the character over from Lucha Libre into film, then into the very fabric of Mexican culture itself. There are plenty of method actors out there in Hollywood and the land of theater who've gotten deeper into their roles through sheer psychological will, practice, and determination. There are some other actors who've gone beyond the norm in an effort to mentally and physically embody their characters. Daniel Day-Lewis has become famous in Hollywood and the entertainment media for his dedication to the method acting technique, but his love of the craft exceeds that of most his contemporaries. For instance, in 1989's My Left Foot, Day-Lewis played Christy Brown, an Irish painter and writer who could only work using the toes on one of his feet. During shooting, Day-Lewis would only use the toes on his foot like Brown, which necessitated the crew moving him around in a wheelchair, occasionally cursing their jobs when they'd have to lift him over camera and lighting cables. Not only that, crew members had to actually spoon-feed him. Day-Lewis took what Stanislavski put into motion and continued on with the teachings of Stella Adler, who wrote that an actor must display 100% honorable selfishness, a selfishness that focuses on the work. More than that, Adler believes that the actor has only his or her own body as an instrument, and a performance involving that embodiment requires a superior sense of self-awareness. Later, during the filming of 1992's The Last of the Mohicans, Day-Lewis learned to live off the land just like his character, as well as learn to build canoes. For Day-Lewis's role in 1996's The Crucible, he learned to build a 1600s-style house in which his character would have lived. He's one of the greatest film actors in history. He's followed the approach of Stanislavski, Adler, as well as Sanford Meisner, who believed in the reality of doing as the foundation of acting. Daniel Day-Lewis isn't the only actor to step past the line others wouldn't dare cross for their craft. Enter Divine. Most people, even the straights, know Divine because of her collaborations with filmmaker and filthy auteur John Waters. And most everybody knows of the glorious, hideous moment of infamy from Waters' Pink Flamingos in 1972 when Divine, accompanied by the old tune How Much Is That Doggy in the Window, consumes a fresh piece of dog shit straight from a dog's ass.
I do hope that doggy is for sale.
While this might seem the furthest thing from genuine method acting, it's actually spot on with Adler's theory about the method technique. Everyday notions of good taste, beauty, and morality can mean death for truthful behavior and in-depth performance. Adler attributes those notions to middle-class defensiveness, in that many actors who were brought up middle-class will inevitably bring with them ideas of conformity and morality that can, and often do, go against the nature of a truthful performance. If there's a personality who sits somewhere between actors like Daniel Day-Lewis and their filth queen Divine, it'd have to be Andy Kaufman. What's most exciting about Kaufman is that he bridged the Hollywood acting world with wrestling's kayfabe. Specifically, when Kaufman had his infamous feud with Jerry the King Lawler in the early 1980s. When Kaufman and Lawler appeared on Late Night with David Letterman, they duped the majority of America into believing the truth of their wild altercation after Lawler slapped Kaufman out of his chair. Even before that, Kaufman had worked in the Memphis territory alongside Jimmy Hart and other wrestling heels, taunting crowds about their hygiene and using the word redneck liberally. He'd also wrestle women, which drew the ire of many. The world thought it was real until the mid-1990s after Kaufman's death, when Jim Carrey, who'd later go on to play the deceased comedian in Man on the Moon from 1999, revealed the elaborate work as part of an NBC special celebrating Kaufman's career.
He's over towards our kid. 1, 2, 3. What?
Though Kaufman was a master at a unique blend of method acting and kayfabe, he still never provoked the madness and violence of wrestling fans like some of the wild old heels from the days of the wrestling territories. There are endless legendary anecdotes about wrestling heels wreaking havoc in and around the ring. Archie the Stomper Gouldy, a Canadian wrestler who gained such a name from stomping on downed opponents with his big black cowboy boots, recounted stories of psychotic fans destroying his vehicles. Worse, his kids were getting beat up at school by other kids who hated their dad's character. Most terrifying was at the Kansas City Auditorium, when Goldie took his children to see a special match, only for them to leave and come across 3 men wielding weapons, looking for the Stomper. Goldie scared them off with a pistol he always kept under the seat of his car in case of such emergencies. George Bolas, better known as the Zebra Kid, was once attacked by a crowd of 50 people, many of them throwing bricks, in Columbus, Ohio during June of 1957. Karl von Hess did the time-tested heel gimmick of playing a Nazi, On top of that, he'd throw chairs at opponents, and kept wire in his trunks to strangle them when he wasn't able to get a hold of a microphone cord, which led to him getting shot at, stabbed, attacked, and burned en route to becoming a white-hot heel in the late 1950s. It's because these men were so capable of embodying their role physically and psychologically, as well as the fact that kayfabe was so prevalent in pro wrestling back then, that they conjured up very real emotions in the audiences who came to see their shows.
I'm gonna get the man that hurt my son.
As Vince McMahon worked on perpetually altering wrestling into sports entertainment, and the territories for the most part died off, kayfabe also started to become mostly a thing of the past. One significant event in the relative death of kayfabe is when babyface Jim Duggan and heel Iron Sheik were pulled over together with marijuana and cocaine on them. Two men supposed to be bitter, mortal enemies in the world of the WWF, caught not only doing drugs, but riding together like friends. This event stripped some of the last veneer from the perception of kayfabe within pro wrestling, as fans became more and more aware of its presence, and everybody seemed to become a smart mark. And when kayfabe started to die, it was only a special few wrestlers who'd carry on the old traditions, albeit in fresh, exciting ways that worked with the evolution of wrestling rather than against it. Yet kayfabe and method acting alike have caused damage, no matter how much they've done for their respective industries.
Come over here and kiss me on my hot mouth. I'm feeling romantical.